Hi everyone, this is Christine with LeftSideArt, and today I'm going to start a new art journal page in my new Ranger Dilutions Creative Journal. This is nice big 9x12, very thick media paper, and it is pretty nice to work on with wet media. So we're going to do art journaling in 3 major steps. The first step is to create your background. Now I'm adding Liquitex Basics Gesso to my 2 pages, and I am using this as a glue for some Tim Holtz tissue paper. This is called Postal, and it's pretty thin and it's easy to lay it down, but I want it blurred out. Adding gesso to my 2 pages on top of the tissue paper will really push this image into the background a bit more. I first started out with a little bit of watered down gesso and realized I wanted it pushed to the background a bit more, so I just added straight gesso to both pages. After that dries, I trimmed around the edges. And now I'm using Faber-Castell's Big Pit markers. This is India ink, but you have a few moments to move it around in your page a bit, either with a baby wipe like how I'm using here, or a watered down paintbrush. And once it's dried, it's permanent, so you can really layer the colors on top of each other. I'm using a red, orange, and a darker brown just to create a little bit of color in my background and to create a border going around my 2 pages. I'm also adding some of this brown to any rough areas within my background where the tissue paper might not have laid perfectly flat. This is a good way of adding texture to your background without adding additional media like molding paste. Now I'm going in with some Faber-Castell paper stencils. Even though these stencils are paper, they are reusable, but they're rather cheap if you get these 10 packs rather than the plastic stencils. And I'm using archival ink, which is also permanent once it dries, and I'm applying the ink to the background through the stencil with a little finger dauber. You could also use your pit brushes or paint if you don't have the finger dauber and archival ink pad. These are stamps by Tim Holtz called Reflections. All of the links to supplies will be provided in the description below. This is an adult coloring book by Patricia Moffat, and it's a pretty nice book of animals, and I like to cut them out and use them in my art journal or mixed media boards. This one is a fox. Just something different you can do with adult coloring books. And this takes us to our second step of creating an art journal page, is choosing your focal object. You could be doing this in an art journal or on a canvas board or on a single sheet of paper. With an art journal like this, sometimes the crease in the middle could be a little challenging to work around, but I think it worked out pretty well in the end. I used Gel Medium by Try Art as a glue behind and on top of the fox image. This allows the pit brush markers to be applied a bit easier to the image. The Gel Medium makes the paper a non-porous surface. If I were to add the pit brush markers without the Gel Medium, it would be like applying a marker to a piece of paper where you would not be able to spread it. I'm using a dampened paintbrush to help spread the pit brush markers in the smaller areas. You can just as easily use paint or water-soluble crayons here as well. continuing to layer the pit brushes until I am satisfied with my image. I'm adding shading to the white fur on the fox so that the white fur isn't completely white, and then I'm also adding some of the same orange that I used in the fox's face to my background to make it look cohesive. Now I'm adding some Liquitex Basics acrylic paint. This color is light blue permanent. I watered it down a little bit in a dish, and I'm just going to add it to my background with some splatters, and then also painting it directly onto the fox. Now I'm adding some black gesso. This is by Art Basics with a Tim Holtz splatter stencil to my background. This black gesso dries thick and very matte, and it's a nice variation to the dark colors that I already have going around in my background. The tool I'm using is by Prima Marketing. It's not a brush, but it's kind of like a rubbery tip applicator with a handle on it. This has saved me many paintbrushes from being destroyed with either gesso or gel medium. And it's only a couple of dollars at your art supply store. Now I'm using a big fox punch to add a smaller fox to the opposite side of the page. That's going to go with my quote. Right now I don't know how many I want to use, and if I want to use the actual punch or the negative space. I'm also selecting my message, and this is the third step of creating an art journal page. This little box of chipboard pieces is also by Tim Holtz, and it has a lot of singular words or nice little sayings, and I go through almost all of them trying to figure out what I want to say. And with it being the new year and foxes, I came up with Seek and Wander. I use gel medium to apply these images and words as well. Sometimes I'll use a little bit heavier glue for larger objects like this Eileen's tacky glue. I've also added a couple little pieces of wood veneer airplanes. I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's iridescent gold to the fox and to my background. Now I'm adding some white splatters to my background using Liquitex Basics Titanium White, but you could just as easily use some gesso. I'm also using this white to add a few highlights here and there. And that's about it. I'm going to date this and call this good for today. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more art journaling and 3 easy steps. Thank you.